Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to this joint Canopy and Fashion Revolution event called Forest Rights are Human Rights. I'm Nicole Rycroft, and I'm Canopy's founder and executive director. We're a solutions-driven environmental not-for-profit dedicated to conserving the world's forests, stabilizing our climate and biodiversity. And we do this by harnessing the purchasing influence of large brands to revolutionize supply chains and kickstart next generation alternatives to forest-based textiles and packaging. An important part of our work is helping advance Indigenous and traditional communities' rights and local NGO partners who work with these frontline communities that are adjacent to the world's carbon and species-rich forests. Canopy is currently working to eliminate ancient and endangered forests from the viscose and packaging supply chains with the fashion industry to catalyze circular economy solutions and conservation on the ground. And we're delighted to be a partner in this year's Fashion Revolution Week. I'm really excited for this conversation. Conserving forests is important to all of humanity, and that a stable climate and clean air, clean water are essential human rights. But when we think about rights, when it comes to the fashion industry, we all think about garment workers, but often don't think about those who live in the regions where the raw materials, the wood, the cotton, the leather, the minerals are coming from. And so I'm delighted to introduce two women, both of whom are doing fantastic work in and on behalf of these frontline communities and the world's forests. So first, Woro Supartinah, who's based in Sumatra, Indonesia. Woro has spent most of her working life with NGOs on the issues of forest governance and community empowerment. She's currently working for Indonesian NGO LPESM, that's quite the mouthful, Woro, which is an organization that works to support Indonesian communities surrounding forests and promoting pro-social and environmental policies to government, and particularly government at the village and district level. So selamat malam, Woro. I know it's late there in Pekanbaru. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Selamat pagi. Good morning, Nicole.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here.
And then, of course, from Brazil, welcome to Fernanda Simon. Fernanda will be familiar to many of you in the Fashion Revolution community. Fernanda is responsible, of course, for bringing Fashion Revolution movement to Brazil. And she now heads the Fashion Revolution Brazil Institute as its executive director. She's at the helm of transformative projects such as the Fashion Transparency Index and Brazil's Eco Fashion Week. Fernanda, welcome.
Thank you, Nicole, for the introduction and for the opportunity to talk about Brazilian forests. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. So I'm really excited about this conversation. So thanks to both of you for making time for this. And of course, thanks to both of you for having this conversation in English. Let's just dive in. So let's start by giving our audience a sense of what's happening on the ground and what some of the problems are. And then we can pivot and speak about the pathway forward and some of the solutions. So if you could both briefly tell us all about where it is that you live and explain a little bit about what's happening on the ground in forests near you. Woro, let's start with you. What's happening in Sumatra? What are the main threats?
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Well, actually, I live in Pekanbaru, Riau province, in Sumatra Islands. It's located in western part of Indonesia. And we have also specific type of land that is fragile and really needs strong management. If it's not managed properly or sustainably, it will create fires easily. So the threats for the forest that we have been experienced in the last 3 decades that coming from two major sectors. One is palm oil company and the second one is pulp and paper industry. So they start operating in late 80s, and starting from that we face massive deforestation. So from late 80s until now, we have lost around 9 million, and now we only have 1.4 million natural forests. And with that big business, and in my province that we have also two giant pulp and paper industry, and it's really tripling the burden for the community and also for the environment. And in fact that we experience environmental loss, we experience also has disasters almost every year, and fires, forest fires, and we have also faced thousands of social conflicts since the company, especially pulp and paper company, operate in Riau province.
And the fires have been particularly damaging for human health, right? For just the impacts on local communities have been very intense.
Sure.
Thanks, Woro. We'll loop back and explore in a little bit more detail. But Fernanda, can you also just share a little bit about what's at stake and what the main stresses are on Brazil's forests?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, at the moment, the situation in Brazil is quite chaotic. The tropical forests are being burned and the indigenous people are persecuted. The government, the Bolsonaro government itself, is the main driver of all this destruction. Amazon, as you probably know, is the world's largest rainforest, so huge and diverse. But during the last year, the deforestation was the largest of the 12 years. And this year is already 70% bigger than the average recorded between 2009 and 2018. So it's being ridiculous what's happening here. And the local people have no support at all. Some local indigenous community, such as the Yanomamis, they are facing destruction of their lands and rivers by the illegal gold mining. So this is something really urgent that's happening right now. I even have a quote from the leader, Davi Kopenawa, and he says that he can see the dirt water, the yellow river, everything is polluted. Gold digger man is like a pig, and they coming like hungry animals looking for the wealth of our land, and it is advancing very fast, and the mining is already arriving at my house. So it's quite sad.
It sounds very dire.
Exactly. And well, and a part of Amazon, we also have other areas in Brazil like Pantanal and Cerrado, and which are being drastically affected by the government and the population neglect as well. So for instance, last year, 2020, the fires in the Pantanal were the largest in the whole history. And it is estimated that the fire has already destroyed 1/3 of all this vegetation. And so killing animals, and it was quite horrible to watch what happened to Pantanal last year. And well, local people are the same. They have no food, no health assistance, and any kind of support. And well, beyond the Amazon, beyond Pantanal, beyond Cerrado, everywhere we go in Brazil, we see destruction. Even in big cities like São Paulo, we see the trees being cutted, the rivers are extremely polluted, the green areas with some native forest around the cities are getting smaller and smaller. So, well, the forest situations in Brazil at the moment is quite sad and quite dramatic situation.
Yeah, I think the whole world watched devastated with a feeling of dread when the Amazon was on fire, which happened in 2015 in Indonesia as well, with huge fires that were producing more greenhouse gases in a day than the American economy. Fernanda, can you talk just a little bit more about how it sounds very widespread, both from the cities to those communities that are kind of living in their traditional lands in the forest. How are communities being affected by these practices?
Well, this community, they have no support from the government. They have no health assistance. So they are quite isolated. And with the COVID pandemic, the situation is getting worse and worse because some of them are getting ill. So they have no access to the health system. And it's quite dramatic. In the Amazon, as I said, we have this mining thing happening. So they are getting inside the indigenous communities and just killing people, killing people, destructing everything. And well, it's horrible, everything that's happening. And it's not just in the Amazon, in the Pantanal. I've been very close to some communities in Pantanal, and they are just abandoned, they're just abandoned. They have no support at all. So
yeah. I think many people will probably be aware that there's I think in 2020, there were more than 330 frontline defenders killed for defending their lands, trying to stop exploitation, resource exploitation. So obviously Brazil is one of those countries that has a very poor track record of protecting its frontline defenders. Fernanda, I'm going to come back to you, but Woro, people, as you mentioned in your opening comments, when people think about forest destruction in Indonesia, they often think about palm oil or plantations for paper. Can you speak a little bit about how the fashion industry is impacting our climate and the forests of Indonesia?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, I heard that the fashion industry has also give impacts a long time ago with the environmental quality, for example, like river pollution. However, the link to deforestation, I mean, based on the case that happened in Riau, in my place, starting at 2019, that there's a company called APR Asia Pacific region. It's part of April Group, Royal Golden Eagle, which is also have Satri. There's operating for the viscose, who's sourcing their material from wood fiber. And for us, that even before the fashion, before they produce the viscose, it's already giving so much impact, especially negative impact for the environmental and for the people. We are afraid that this establishment of new fashion industry will give more burden for the environmental and for the people, and especially because Riau province is a peatland. We worried that this existing problem that still happen today, forest fires and social conflict that has not been solved properly, they will remain the same. They will still there, and there is a possibility of the number of increasing case of environmental loss or destruction and social conflict also in the futures.
Right. So I mean, I've had the honor and pleasure of being in Indonesia and visiting, getting to bear witness to a number of communities in Sumatra who have opposed logging of their traditional lands for, some of them for up to 25 years or more, only to see their forests and farms destroyed and replaced with eucalyptus or acacia plantations. So how are the communities that you're working with, how do they feel and what do they think of the forest industry? And can you share a little bit about what happens when communities or individual community members oppose deforestation or plantations on their traditional lands?
So in many cases, the community that we assist, they oppose the operational of the company. And I know that governments and company claim that they give profit or they give income for the region, for the state, and etc. etc. However, we see that on the ground that there's so many problems embedded with their operation, and there's also research done by a local NGO here that. Central of poverty is located in the area near or surround the forestry industry operation. So we don't really see there's a big positive impact for the community, and there is several cases that if the community then oppose the operational of the company, they have been criminalized, and then they have been put into jail, and then also they lost their livelihood, they lost their land, and if there's a stage in Indonesia where support for the communities is very low. So even if they have protests to the government, to the national or district government, they don't listen. But to some point, if they make some big action or some big protests, and I know there's one village, Pulau Padang, that's many community, several people from several village, they sew their mouth just to protest the operation of the community. Then after that, the government start to make relevant action to the case.
So Woro, you're saying the people in the community actually sewed their mouth together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they have been sending their message that to get attention from the government, but they don't listen.
Right.
So they make something that very, very, I think very, very sad in our side. However, this is one way for them to make their voice heard by many people.
Mm-hmm. And Fernanda, you'd spoken about the violence that frontline communities face, and it's just wondering if intimidation and criminalization, so facing criminal charges, is also common.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I think you mentioned, Fernanda, earlier on about just, all eyes have been on the Amazon in Brazil with the Bolsonaro government and how they've rolled back environmental laws and the rights of indigenous communities. That, Brazil was actually an example of, efforts to reduce deforestation rates. And obviously those have kind of skyrocketed with his government in place. But can you talk in a little bit more detail about how the fashion industry specifically impacts forests in Brazil? And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah. Well, I see three major connections from fashion industry to the forests in Brazil. First of all, the cotton production, because Brazil is one of the largest cotton producers in the world. So this cotton is grown on a monoculture system full of chemicals and in areas that has been deforested on behalf of the agribusiness. So it's normal in Brazil, in the middle of Brazil, we have some places where used to be forests not a long time ago, and now it's just cotton and soya. Well, we know that the monoculture itself degrades the soil and has a significant negative impact. But I believe cotton is one of the most impacting. We also have the leather issue, as leather is cattle skin. Livestock industry is responsible for more than 14% of all our greenhouse gas emissions.
Wow.
And in order to make room for the livestock, forests are deforested, so resulting in devastating consequences for the planet. And as I said before, we also have the gold mining, what is a very urgent matter as well. So I believe cotton, leather, and gold mining are the main connection between forests in Brazil and fashion industry.
And Fernanda, are there alternatives? So what are the alternatives that to how things are being done there right now?
Well, I believe like the first thing is mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people in Brazil are very influenced by the politicians, by the big corporations, by the government. They believe that the forest has no value. You know, it is just some land with some plants. So, you know, we can just cut these trees and that's it. So they cannot see its richness. They cannot see how important the forests are for our existence in this world. So I believe the most important thing is to change these perceptions, because the forest must be seen as a perfect system which we must learn, we must study, we live together to coexist and understand that we belong to the system. And if the forests die, we will die too. So I believe that this perception is the most urgent thing that we need to change. But in practical terms, you know, I have seen many agroforest projects find integrated solutions here in Brazil. And these solutions which benefit the community, the soil, the biodiversity. So it is like regenerating the land, but also giving hope for the community. And also we need to be conscious and to share all these informations and to press the government and to support local NGOs. And well, I think the solutions goes this way.
Right. And then of course there are interesting alternatives on a material side as well, right? Like there are leathers that can be grown through a fermentation process, and like kind of microbial leather being produced that will help bypass the need for kind of animal production for leather. There's this transition to the circular economy to enable less virgin cotton having to be grown as well. But I do that piece around mind shift, the mindset shift, and how we value our planet is a really important piece of it. And actually, that raises for me a question I'd love to ask both of you, if you have thoughts on it. That you know, today's discussion has largely and is largely focused on the rights of frontline communities, but also overlooked in that, Fernanda, I think you just spoke to that very eloquently, are the rights of nature, of our natural systems and the millions of species that we share our planet with. I'm aware that there are 7 countries that have legally recognized the rights of nature to date. Do you think this is a trend that's going to continue to gain traction?
Yeah, well, it sounds very new for me, actually, for myself, to talk about the right of nature, but I think it's very interesting idea, and yeah, thing to spread, because I think we believe that local communities and people who works to defend forest or environment, they already know that the function or the relation between the forest to our life. The forest, the tree is our life, and no one can deny that. But the thing is, above that, there is some party who think that forest is like a commodity, that they can produce money from that, and beyond that also in the process, based on our case, that to get the permit, it's also involved gratification and bribery, and there is some people who get advantage in advance, before the trees is being cut. So I think it could be very useful tools also to uh, to ask the people thinking that forest is not only a thing they are our life, and they are the air that we breathe. So I think I'm waiting to see if this thought could be well spread in Indonesia actually.
And then Fernanda, do you have an opinion one way or the other?
Yes, well, I totally believe that all what's happening to the world, climate change, is all a consequence of our disconnection with the earth, with the planet, with this creative force of nature. So yes, I totally believe we must reconnect to this force. So yes, here in Brazil we have some indigenous community that they say that, you know, that they have the elements of nature as a relative. So like
Yeah.
the river is their uncle, you know, so they have another kind of relationship with nature. And so yes, if we have all these problems now, maybe it's because we lost this connection. So to talk about the rights of natures is essential, so we can start to see nature as something alive and not something, just something is a being. So
something that we're part of rather than something that we have dominion over or control over. I think also what's been very clear, I love that that, you know, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, Indonesia or Brazil or Canada or Australia or Africa, that they, you know, both within traditional and indigenous community folklore, as well as those that are living in these areas, that there is that a deep appreciation and valuing and sense of connection with river systems, with trees. They're, you know, like in Canada, the indigenous communities are often, their clans are, you know, the wolf clan or the raven clan, so descendants from specific animals. And of course, there are reports that consistently show that the land that's managed by indigenous peoples has significantly lower deforestation rates than elsewhere. So how do we go about getting more power back into the hands of communities? Obviously, it'll be different given different political context, but do you have any kind of quick high priorities around how we can achieve that in Brazil and in Indonesia?
Well, for Indonesia case, luckily that our government has now start recognize the community rights to manage the forest, and they already issued some regulation that local community to manage the forest. However, in reality, we're still facing some obstacles, because even if the communities also have already given the rights, not support given for them, and apart from that there's the rights also given to the company in the name of restoration permit, which is also they can easily get that. So I think in order to help the community is that we should provide support and continuous assistance for the community, because they have been abandoned for so long for not managing the forest, and for not living even from the ecosystem that near them. So I believe that we should support them continuously.
Great. And Fernanda?
well, I believe first we must respect more and value their culture, because here in Brazil, people, they don't really respect, you know, and value the indigenous culture. So I think it is something very serious. And well, and here we see many NGO doing a nice job. So I think to support this NGO, to make some donations, go to do volunteers. So I think it's a possible way, you know, to be closer and to be with those who are doing something real know how to deal with this community as well, because sometimes we think it's easy, just go there and do something. It's not that easy. And so I think to support the local NGOs is something possible and real and not that difficult.
Yeah, I think that's the priority for us at Canopy, is to work with our local NGO partners, like people like Woro and other organizations, just because, you know, communities themselves, like if they have a bunch of different organizations coming to them and at them, like it's like there's only so much, there can be a lot of demands, right? And so working to help support our really skilled and competent local colleagues is a real priority for all of us, I think, in the international community. So I think that's a really important point. Okay, so moving into our last question, I think, just because of time, if each of us could just snap our fingers and do something for forests and community, what would that be? What's your kind of, do you have any additional sort of big wish for the next couple of years? And I can start at Canopy. I know that we are working, our big finger snap wish is that we will replace 50% of the forest fiber that's currently logged to make paper and packaging and viscose. And we're going to replace it with circular economy alternatives like waste textiles and agricultural residues. And that will help enable us to protect 30 to 50% of the world's forest by 2030, as scientists are calling. So that's my one big initiative for the next couple of years. Woro, what would be your, if you could?
For us is to assist as many as possible the community that could gain forests, so we still can see the forest span still until our next generation coming.
Great, I love that. And Fernanda?
Well, I think what I hope is that we as a global community, we learn how to live in harmony with the forest, with the animals, people, all living beings, and learn how to respect and to integrate. And I think this is what I hope we act together for ourselves, our communities, and the whole nature.
So here's to all three of our kind of big changes coming true within the next 3 to 5 years. What a different world we would be living in. So I could talk to both of you for another 2 hours easily, and I look forward to that opportunity. But I know that we need to wrap, and so I want to thank you both for your really important work, as well as thank you for sharing your stories with us today. Before you go, can you both tell everyone where we can find you online, be it a social media tag or a website address?
Sure, you can, I mean, if you can take a look at our website, www.lpesm.org.id. I think that's the best way to reach for our work.
Great. And Fernanda?
For Fashion Revolution Brazil, you can go to fashionrevolution.org, and we have a Brazilian page, or social medias, Instagram, we have a page where we communicated a lot. But yes, website or Instagram would be nice.
Great. And of course, you can find Canopy at canopyplanet.org or at Canopy Planet on socials as well. I was going to give a little promo to Fashion Revolution, but you already covered that, Fernanda, so thanks very much. Huge thanks to both of you and to, just for your partnership and to helping give lift to the realities of those who are on the front lines in forests, struggling against enormous odds every day as they strive for environmental protection as well as for justice. So thanks for the work that you're both doing in Indonesia and Brazil, as well as for representing the voices of communities all around the world that have facing similar struggles.